Hi, welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. So I watched Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker and I have many thoughts. I don't want this to just be a review of the movie because I'm sure there's a million of those already. Instead, what I'll do, fitting in with the loose theme of my channel, is I'll really narrow down my focus on a particular storytelling device or trope that I think is most responsible for the feelings I have of episode 9, and more significantly, the feelings I have of this trilogy as a whole. Because something I should clarify right out the gate is, I actually do not have strong feelings of hatred for any one of these movies individually. This isn't Game of Thrones Season 8 to me. I know it is to many people, but I honestly don't care about it as much as I did with that. I do think these three movies are all flawed, primarily with the most recent one, which we'll get into, but I have had a good time with all of them. Initially, what I thought the topic of this video would be was nostalgia bait. I thought what I hated most about the Disney trilogy is that they were making easy money, exploiting the nostalgia we have of the saga, as they've done with pretty much every property they own this past decade. But I realized the nostalgia has actually been the most fun aspect of watching these movies for me. I think when I look back, especially around December 2015 with the excitement and sentimentality many of us had, it's something I'll look at fondly. So while I do want to drag Disney for their shameless nostalgia cash grabs, I'll save that topic for a future video. Where my problem is, and what is by far the most frustrating thing about the sequel trilogy, is that I cannot for the life of me view this as one coherent, flowing, thought out, 3-arc narrative, which is what a trilogy is supposed to be. Which brings me to the topic of this video, retroactive continuity, or Retcon for short. This is when facts that have already been established in a fictional story are then contradicted, changed, or completely ignored in future installments. This can be done for many reasons, such as fixing mistakes that were made previously, or as a response to fan backlash, or for the sake of a twist. For example, in a different trilogy, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. In the first one, Peter Parker, who wins the fighting tournament, is only paid $100 by the promoter instead of the $3,000 that he was promised in the ad. Right after that, a thief robs the promoter. Peter has a chance to stop him, but instead decides to do nothing as revenge because he was cheated out of his winnings.
Thanks.
As he's leaving, he finds out his Uncle Ben has been shot by a carjacker and dies. Peter pursues the carjacker and finds out that it is the thief who he let escape. The whole point of this, and the movies as a whole, is Peter Parker grappling with the fact that
With great power comes great responsibility.
he had the power to do the right thing and stop this thief, but he let his bitterness get the best of him by doing nothing. And he paid painfully for that decision. Then Spider-Man 3 comes along and decides, no, actually, the thief didn't kill Uncle Ben. It was his partner in crime that did it, who also happens to be the Sandman, just for the sake of having a twist. And by doing that, they take away a lot of the emotional weight of the scene in the first movie, and the lesson it teaches the audience and Peter Parker himself. This doesn't mean that every twist is a retcon. Just because we are given new information and past events weren't what we thought they were, does not by any means automatically make it a retcon. But I think viewers are smart enough to know the difference between a twist that was there from the beginning, we just couldn't see it yet, versus a twist that is decided at the last minute because the writers see an opportunity to change what was already established in the story before. So before I get into the very obvious example of this in episode 9 with Rey and her lineage, I just have to talk about a very tiny moment that is so funny to me and perfectly encapsulates what I think J.J. Abrams' approach to this movie was. It's when Poe and Finn are laying out battle plans or whatever, and some guy is like, well, what about the quote-unquote Haldo maneuver? And Poe is like, oh no, it would be stupid to do that. It's a 1 in a million shot. Immediately, what this reminded me of is the time turner situation in Harry Potter. I know many of you probably don't want to hear about anything relating to J.K. Rowling right now, or ever, given recent events, and trust me, neither do I, but just bear with me for a second, I need to get this out. In Prison of Azkaban, we are introduced to the time turner, a time-traveling device that made for a great, entertaining third act to what many people agree is the best movie in the series. And it's entertaining in the book as well. But including time travel in any story almost always creates narrative problems, and this is no exception. Despite this, for years, and I mean up until the 30th of July 2016, I have vehemently defended the inclusion of the time turner in Harry Potter for 2 reasons. One, the way it was initially shown to us made complete sense. This is what the timeline should look like. Hermione goes through her first class, then loops back to attend a second class at the same time. This is one single timeline. It's only that there are two versions of her for a small part of it. There are no different versions of this timeline. It's not about changing the past, it's about looping back to do what she's already done. I hope that makes sense. It's the same when both her and Harry time travel, in that they don't change anything in the past. They just lived out the exact same singular timeline from the different perspective. There isn't a timeline where Buckbeak was killed because the trio just thought they saw Buckbeak getting killed when it was actually McNair swinging down his axe in frustration. Buckbeak was always saved. There isn't a timeline where Harry wasn't saved from the Dementors. It's just that he thought it was his dad that did it, and it's only when he goes through the loop does he see that it's him who actually did it.
I knew I could do it this time because, well, I'd already done it. Does that make sense?
No! But I don't like flying!
But nothing changes, it's always like that, a singular timeline. That was reason number 1 why I defended it. Reason number 2 is that yes, even though it made sense in the context we saw it used, it still created the issue of why wouldn't we see such a powerful device be used again in high stakes situations. Something Rowling herself acknowledged, saying it opened up a vast number of problems for her. This was solved by having Hermione give hers back and then having every single time turner located in the time room in the Ministry of Magic sort of destroyed or made permanently unusable during the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. So there we had it. Time turners gave us a cool, memorable part of the series, and the problem of them being too powerful was resolved so it didn't create any future problems. All was well. That is until the 30th of July 2016 when this absolute garbage play called Harry Potter and the Cursed Child was released, where J.K. Rowling, as has become standard with her nowadays, tries her absolute best to destroy the legacy and world she built with those 7 books. Both these good reasons I gave for why time turners aren't so bad are completely thrown out the window by first of all having them exist again, second allowing the user to go as far back in time as they wanted and change past events which created a completely new, different, insane timeline to the one already established. I won't get into the details of this trash play. If you don't know, you can go look it up. But if you know, you know. Now bringing it back to Star Wars, how does that one comment on the Holdo maneuver relate to this? To me it's the same. You have this really cool new trick that's powerful and introduced to us for the first time. That being lightspeed used as a weapon. I know not everybody's in agreement that it was cool, but to me that scene is so stunning and I'll always remember seeing it in the theater. The complete silence after the build-up. And just having my mouth open in awe. I unashamedly loved it. That being said, like with the time turner, with something so powerful being introduced to the story, there is the glaring question of, is this believable? Why hasn't it been used before and why don't they use it all the time? And like with the time turner, you had people defending and explaining in detail why it is believable, even posting full equations on why the math checks out. And to me, I always just thought of it as being similar to kamikaze pilots where people using their own aircrafts in war as a weapon by ramming them into their target has been a legitimate strategy used before, but that doesn't mean that we see it happen all the time. It's still really uncommon. I will sympathize with J.J. Abrams in that while I don't agree with the narrative going about that Rian Johnson wrote him into a corner, I will concede that with this specific thing, I do think he only had 3 options. He could either A. completely ignore the hyperspace ramming method, B. include it in the movie despite knowing about the very vocal fans that hated it, or C. give a reason as to why they can't use it. He went with C and gave the most laughable reason because it's one of the many moments that just blatantly retcons The Last Jedi. No matter what you think of that scene, no matter what you think of the Holdo maneuver, there is absolutely nothing that indicates that what she's about to do is a 1 in a million shot. The way Hux reacts when he realizes what's happening is not the reaction of someone that knows the odds are astronomically in his favor. He's in full-on panic mode. But more importantly with Holdo, why in God's name would she attempt something that has such a microscopic chance of being successful when not long before that moment she had screamed this at Poe?
You have bet the survival of the Resistance on bad odds and put us all at risk?
You have bet the survival of the Resistance on bad odds and put us all at risk. Then turns around and does what we are now supposed to believe is a 1 in a million maneuver. even if you don't like the character, and I definitely wasn't a fan of her dynamic with Poe, because it was annoying to watch and all they needed to do was talk to each other. There's still no doubt that she was written as a level-headed leader with a plan. And something as small as one line in The Rise of Skywalker can completely retcon all of that and make the entire scene a stupid, nonsensical one for even the people that defended it and liked it. Just like how J.K. Rowling retconned the Time Turner. My goal here is not to nitpick, and I really hope that's not how it's coming across. I never want to make a video where I'm just listing all the plot holes or errors I can find. What I'm trying to get across is that trilogies at their best complement each other. They are intertwined, and when we are given new information later on, we can go back to the previous movies and look at them with new eyes that adds to the experience of rewatching it, not completely destroying and taking a dump all over it. And that is what this trilogy is. They are 3 movies fighting against each other, telling us different things. The Last Jedi in many ways hates The Force Awakens, and The Rise of Skywalker to a much greater extent, in my opinion, hates The Last Jedi, which makes for a very unpleasant view of this story as a trilogy. All we have are the same characters being tossed around between different minds who have different ideas of what this should be. I'm sure many think that I should be blaming The Last Jedi for this trilogy being incoherent in that J.J. Abrams did the best he could do given the mess he was handed. But I don't buy that at all. I understand that the transition from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi is a little jarring in that The Force Awakens set up a lot of questions, and for 2 years people were speculating and building theories on what those answers were. And then The Last Jedi comes along and says, to hell with your theories, let go of the past, etc.
It's time to let old things die.
I personally love that, but I completely understand why it infuriated so many. But regardless of what side of the fence you're on, by the end of the movie, what's done is done. What the third and final movie needed to do is move forward, not backwards, and retcon what has already been established. Because by doing so, you aren't tying the trilogy together, you are ripping it apart. Rian Johnson did not write J.J. Abrams into a corner. He gave him all the space in the world to take the story wherever he wanted, and the direction he went is backwards to try and fix what had already been done. So here we are. Apparently, Rey is a Palpatine now. I won't get into the ridiculousness of retconning Palpatine's death and the big FU it sends to Anakin and his entire redemption arc. I won't even try and question how the hell Palpatine survived falling down a reactor shaft, blowing up, and then the Death Star he was on also blowing up. Because J.J. Abrams himself must know that this is so insane, which is why he didn't bother giving us an explanation of how it happened. Seriously, if Palpatine can survive that, I don't know how we're supposed to believe anything other than him being completely invincible and coming back to the big screen in another 10 years or so. But whatever, I'll just stick to the effect this has on the sequel trilogy. Someone tried to make the argument that actually this isn't retconning because Kylo says he didn't actually lie when he told Rey that her parents were nobodies. It's just that her grandparent... If you believe them when they say that bringing back Palpatine was the plan from the beginning, I have a bridge to sell you because that is truly the most clear-cut lie ever told. Everyone knows that this trilogy was a ride-as-you-go type of thing and not something that was planned out in full before The Force Awakens, which is just the craziest thing to me. I have a video on Game of Thrones about foreshadowing not being a substitute for character development. But this is a million times worse because we don't even get the tiniest bit of foreshadowing to prepare us for this. Not even one single minuscule moment that we can point to in the previous 2 movies as foreshadowing. They just hit us with it immediately in the opening crawl and we're expected to just take it and be like, oh, Palpatine lives, okay, cool, cool, cool. And not too soon after that, we're supposed to be like, oh, and Rey is his granddaughter, okay, cool, cool, cool. What happened here is JJ set up mystery around her parentage, then Rian Johnson made what is, in my opinion, the right decision to reveal that her parents were unimportant. The original trilogy already has the most iconic twist ever, with the revelation that Darth Vader is Luke's father, which happened in the second movie of that trilogy. So in the second movie of this trilogy, instead of trying to copy that and have this big reveal on that scale, which is impossible to meet, the right thing to do was switch it around and have the hero be an outsider that rises up to the occasion. To show that you don't need to be from this powerful lineage to be a hero. The Last Jedi did not retcon The Force Awakens by going this route, because the facts of her lineage were not established in that movie. It was definitely hinted at that maybe her parents are special, but after the reveal in The Last Jedi, those hints could be taken as a misdirection, which happens all the time in movies and is a normal part of storytelling. This is exactly why I don't accept the idea that Abrams was written into a corner. All he had to do was accept what was done in The Last Jedi, even if some of those revelations, like this one, were controversial. He needed to accept it for what it was and move on. You have the setup, the answer, and what should have been a final story of her reaching her full potential as her own individual person that's let go of the past. And at the end, when she's asked her name by a stranger, she can say Rey. Rey who? Just Rey. That would make for one clear narrative that flows through 3 movies and not this disjointed one that we currently have, where we are first told maybe Rey's parents are significant, then nope, they aren't significant and they abandoned her, then but wait, we've changed our minds, they actually are someone and they loved her, and also her grandfather is Palpatine. And at the end, Rey Palpatine will take on the name Skywalker, which makes her even more extra special. I love the scene in The Last Jedi because it's not just about Rey being told her parents were no one, it's her accepting what she already knew.
Sam.
They were nobody.
They were filthy junk traders.
You can see the pain in her face of finally letting down that facade and coming to grips with reality, a reality she's always known. But you can't watch that the same way anymore. Even though Daisy Ridley is giving an amazing performance that shows us clearly what we are supposed to get from that scene, we are now supposed to pretend that we don't see that and instead we should see it as her, admitting that her parents are nobody, but also being wrong about her own admission is just so dumb and so pointless. I could keep going and listing more examples, but my point would just remain the same. The movie is fine, I had a good time shutting off my brain and just taking it in as a standalone. It was entertaining, but in the context of this being a follow-up to a previous movie, and in the context of it being the closing to a 3-movie trilogy and a 9-movie saga, it completely falls apart and becomes detrimental not only to Episode 8, but all the movies that came before that. The Rise of Skywalker gets all the blame from me because its one job was to tie it all together, and instead what it did was spend its time attempting to put a band-aid over the fan backlash of the last movie at the expense of a flowing narrative that makes sense. This is not what a trilogy is supposed to look like. They are 3 standalones that hate each other. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought of The Rise of Skywalker in the comments down below. If you did like the video, please don't forget to hit the like button. It really makes a difference with how the video performs. Subscribe if you're new here and want to see more, and you can follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Again, thanks for watching, bye.
Believe me, I wish that I could just wish away my feelings, but I can't.